Our focus standard for this lesson comes from grade 7, Number Systems, Standard 3, Solve Real-World and Mathematical Problems Involving Rational Numbers. Our topic continues to be from our Multiplying and Dividing Integers unit, Multiplication and Division Word Problems. Our essential question for today is, what keywords help us to determine the proper operation to use when solving word problems? Please take a moment pausing the video if you need to copy down the topic and essential question in your header, along with today's date, set up your question column and your note column, and resume the video when you're ready to begin. So today we're going to start off by just discussing some different things about word problems. Our focus today is on multiplication and division word problems, and so I've included some groups of words here that can serve as keywords to solving problems that indicate that you should be using multiplication, and keywords that will indicate that you should be using division. This is by no means an exhaustive list. You may want to consider making it a bigger table and add some as we do work in class to add to this list. But keywords that indicate multiplication are words like times, groups of, multiple of, repeatedly, per, increased by, product, doubled, tripled, quadrupled, etc., and area. And words that will indicate that you should be using division will be words like share, separate, equally, as much, parts, ratio of, average, split, halved, quotient, as much, cut up. So I do want to make sure that you have this table copied down, and once again you might want to include some space to be able to add more words as we do work with word problems in class that you find and want to add on to this list. This just serves as a reminder with solving word problems, especially on unit tests. If you're going for a 4, you need to check to make sure that you showed all your work, check that your answer is reasonable, and answer in a complete sentence. So in order to earn 4s on word problems when you're taking a unit test, you should be showing all of this information. So you want to practice that in class, and I'll model some of that in our videos today. So let's take a look at our first problem. Mr. Naze's science class was doing experiments about density and determining which materials sink fastest in water. One group found that steel bearings sunk at a rate of 3 inches per second. After 15 seconds, how deep was the steel bearing? So I want you to possibly pause the video, think on this problem. Are there any keywords from our table that tell you which operation we're going to be using? And can you see some keywords that tell us whether we're dealing with positive integers or negative integers? You might want to highlight or make some notes for yourself and then resume the video when you're ready to. So a couple of things I saw. I see 3 inches per second. So I'm going to highlight that per. I'm going to underline if I can. Underlining per because I see that as an indicator that we're using multiplication. And so 3 inches per second. And this word right here, being sunk, that's telling me the type of operation. So if it's sinking, it's going down on a number line, on a vertical number line, which usually means we're dealing with a negative number. This is probably a negative 3 inches per second. And we also know that we're talking about 15 seconds. So that's important too. So the problem that I would probably set up to solve this problem, let's see if you agree. I would write down the problem negative 3 times 15. Because it's sinking at 3 inches per second, so that's a negative 3. Per tells us to multiply. We're taking the distance times the time, and the time that we were given was 15 seconds, so times 15. So think about that for a minute, write down your answer. What is negative 3 times 15? Well, if you said negative 45, I would agree with that answer. And so we've done some work. Does it make sense? Negative 45. We're talking about a steel bearing and how deep it was. So deep is down below the water surface. So we know when we're below the water surface, having a negative integer makes sense. It was 3 inches per second, so after a lot of time, we'd expect it to be pretty far down that number line. So negative 45 seems reasonable to me. So we've done these first two parts. Now we just need to answer it in a complete sentence. We need to take this answer and answer it in a complete sentence, kind of answering what the question asked us. You can think about what that sentence might sound like or be like for you. You could write that down. Here's how I might state it. After 15 seconds, the steel bearing would be negative 40 inches, and I might want to add on to here below the water surface, if I'm being as detailed as possible. So it's a pretty simple sentence, but it gives me my answer. It talks about the context and what object I'm talking about. So this work, along with this sentence, would be a pretty good answer for a word problem on a test. Pretty close to a 4. Alright, let's take a look at the second problem. Number 2. The following are Tiger Woods' scores from the first 9 PGA tournaments in 2017-18. So we see those here. And we're being asked to find what is his average score. So think about that. You might want to go ahead and start doing some calculations, pausing the video if you need to, and then resume the video to see how we compare. Alright, so a couple things I know about average is that it's like finding the mean. You have to add everything up and then divide. And average, you can see it up here, is one of our keywords for division. So what would that look like to set it up? Well, I would say it'd look something like this. Right? So we're taking all of these scores. I've included parentheses around the negative numbers. All of them are negative scores except for one, which makes sense in golf because you're trying to be under par. So you're trying to have a negative score. And we know that there are 9 tournaments, and we can double check, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 scores that we're adding together. So we'd add it all up and divide by 9. So if you haven't set your problem up yet, please do so, and then see if you can do those calculations to see if we agree. Alright, so if we add up these 9 scores, we should get a value of negative 68. And if we divide negative 68 divided by 9, we've got a negative divided by a positive. So I would expect my answer to be negative. And then I would expect you're going to get a repeating decimal. So you're going to get 7 and 5/10 repeating. But I'm going to go ahead and round that to the hundredths and round it to negative 7 and 56/100ths. So that would be his average score. So here we've laid out the setup of the problem. We've shown what we got when we added all the numbers together, being negative 68. And then we include our answer of what we would get after we divide that by 9 to find our average. So for going through the checklist from above, we've shown all of our work. All these numbers are pretty negative, and there's a range, the lowest being negative 17, the highest being a positive 10, and it would make sense that negative 7 and 56/100ths would be about the middle or the average of that set of numbers. So I think that that's a reasonable answer. So the last thing to double check is to make sure that we've included our answer in a complete sentence. So you can write your own sentence for this problem. One possible example might be this. Tiger Woods' average score for the first 9 tournaments was negative 7 and 56/100ths. Alright, so we have one more example word problem for you here. A new startup company, Splats, is projected to lose $1,375 a month for the first year that they are in business. Now that is not unheard of. It costs money to make products into market and all that, so it's not uncommon for companies to be losing money at the beginning when they first start up. And so it's asking us to find how much will the company be in debt after their first year if the projections are correct. So I'm going to ask you to go ahead and go through this problem, show your work, and write a complete sentence, pausing the video to do so, and then resuming the video to compare your work to mine. Let's see how you did. So using some keywords and some information from this problem, I would set out to negative 1,375 times the 12 months that are in the first year. And so if we multiply that out, it's going to be negative 16,500. And then we'd write that in a complete sentence. So you might have something like this. If the projections are correct, Splats will be in debt. Negative $16,500. Alright, so that's going to conclude our video lesson for today on multiplication and division word problems.